Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Ann Patchett's novel Bel Canto. I'll talk briefly about the author, I'll give a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. I've previously reviewed Ann Patchett's Commonwealth for the channel, and I will leave a link in the comment section below to the spoiler-free review of that to get more information about the author, because I've already talked about her past. But real briefly, if you're interested, Ann Patchett is an American author from Tennessee. This book, Bel Canto, was published in 2001, and I believe it's her third or fourth novel. The book has a little bit of an interesting setup, and I'll try to explain it briefly without giving any spoilers. The book is set in I believe it's a South American country in present day, which would be about when the book was written. It's present day, so 2001. And it is about a birthday party that is thrown for a wealthy Japanese businessman by the host country at the vice president of that host country at his home. It's attended by delegates from around the world, ambassadors, business people of various stripes. The opera singer who is paid to attend his birthday, sing at his birthday, is an American. And at the vice president's house, the vice president is the highest ranking official of the host country. At the end of the party, terrorists invade the home, hoping to capture and hold hostage the president of the country, who it's soon discovered is not there. So at that point, what happens is a hostage situation takes place as the home is surrounded by police and military personnel, and we quickly have a hostage situation where we have an international house full of international folks being held hostage by this group of essentially terrorists from the host country who have political demands. And that's Bel Canto. That's the book. It drops you right into the middle of the action. There's not a lot of time wasted. It's a very interesting premise, and it allows for different types of people to interact. One of the main characters is a translator who is basically a polyglot who speaks many different languages, and throughout the book he's kind of used as a go-between to go throughout the different groups and communicate between the terrorists and the hostages and kind of the outside world. There's a representative who there is sent in from the Red Cross, and he soon becomes kind of a side character. I did enjoy the fact that you had a wide, diverse set of characters from kind of all over. It was kind of good and bad, and I'll kind of get into that in some of the parts I didn't quite enjoy as much. Excuse me. I did enjoy the writing very much. I thought that, while not as good as Commonwealth, and I felt this book compared to that it felt a little bit more like a work in progress, where she hadn't quite gotten to the skill level she was at in that book. There are still a lot of good lines. I think that the opening sentences for both that book and this book are very strong. I felt from a plot standpoint, I appreciated the fact that, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I felt that she was very brave is maybe too strong a word, but I felt that she has a setup and she follows the setup through to a logical conclusion. There's no real deus ex machina in the book, and the plot points kind of make sense for the most part. There's maybe one or two quibbles that I had with it, and I'll kind of get into that in a little bit, but I like those things about it. Some of the things I didn't like, I guess I'll just start this off by saying most of what I did not like about this book comes from more, I think, the type of book that it is than necessarily execution. I definitely think there are some execution points that I have problems with, but I think most of it stems from the fact that it's very, for lack of a better term, a very romantic novel. It feels in some places almost like a fairy tale. And by that, I mean, some of the characters do not feel fully fleshed out in the same way that you would have in a fairy tale. For instance, in a fairy tale, you don't necessarily know how the prince treats any kind of peasantry people. You don't know where he went to school to learn horse riding and sword fighting. Any of that stuff is just kind of swept aside. And I think in a lot of ways similar to this book, the way that the characters act and the way that the characters are portrayed, they're always kind of portrayed in a singular manner. They're almost always portrayed in a very putting her best foot forward in a very almost overtly or overly noble, which on one hand I think fits into it being a fairy tale and more of something on that level and less of having fully realistic, full-fleshed characters. It was interesting to me because some of the stuff that I liked the most in Commonwealth was kind of some of the foibles or kind of the negative traits that a lot of the characters seem to have, and it made them feel realistic and more likable. So that kind of is part of it. In addition to the romantic side of things, the characters seem to all relate to certain characters in a uniform manner, which didn't feel realistic to me. There was a sense of if this situation were to take place, there's certain courses of action that I think would have been more deeply considered than they were in this. Just keeping it vague. It's kind of hinted at one point in the book, and then it's kind of not brought back up, which I felt was kind of strange. Everyone seems to adapt really well to the fact that they're in a hostage situation. Ultimately, the book kind of comes down to the themes of music and love being universal languages, which I think the book does a very good job of hammering those things home. This book reminded me in a lot of ways, it reminded me of the film The Shape of Water, and it has kind of a similar fairy tale, almost magical realism feel. At one point in this book, there's a character who's reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I don't think that's by accident. I think that's Patchett kind of acknowledging kind of some of the influences that may have gone into writing this book. I felt, though, kind of like that movie, that while that message is important, it's broad to the point of being almost useless. I can't think similar to this. There don't seem to be enough sharp edges or obstacles put necessarily in front of the characters to make those things mean anything. And kind of going back to the characters being noble, that plays a part of it. You kind of get all the backstory of the characters, and to a person, they almost, I think all of them are likable, noble people. And so there doesn't seem to be a lot of tension in some parts of the book, and I think that was kind of missing. I felt that as the book goes along, it kind of becomes more and more the story of 3 or 4 main characters, and some of the side characters don't get a lot of stage time. The ending in particular doesn't include a lot of those side characters or the epilogue of the book, and I was a little disappointed by that. There's also parts in the middle that are kind of meandering. There's kind of pages that are kind of characters telling stories that ultimately don't add up to very much. And there's a couple characters who, in some ways, feel meaningless. And kind of finally, and this is probably one of the smaller issues with it, the people at the party are all and this kind of goes into the realism aspect of it. The people at the party are all kind of titans of business or politicians who are very, in the real world, very type A driven people. In the book, I think, does this thing where it basically posits that if these people were just to given a different way of life, they would automatically, all of them, adapt to this way of living and prefer it over their old lifestyles, and fall in love with the power of opera. And as someone who kind of flirts a little bit with those worlds, I just felt that may be true on an individual level. I think she posits that as an almost universal, again, this being a fairy tale, a universal thing, and I don't think it is. And that just kind of rang false to me. So that is Bel Canto. I think overall, if you're someone who can get lost in the story of romance and love and the love of music and things like that a little bit more than maybe I can. And I've done those things. I don't think I like those necessarily as themes or plot points in my works. I like that in my personal life, but in the world of fiction, it's not really my favorite thing. I think you're going to like this book a lot more than I did. I just think that, like, again, kind of my issues with it are similar to the Shape of Water issue, where it's you've put up this theme, and my reaction to it is like, okay, so what? And I don't think there's enough there in this novel other than those things to really mean very much. So that's Bel Canto. If you liked, excuse me, Commonwealth, I would give this a try. From everything that I've read and seen, this is one of her more popular novels, so I think it will land a lot more powerfully with maybe other people than maybe it did for me. I still think Commonwealth is kind of above and beyond this book for me personally. I think that book was a lot sadder. This book has its sad moments, but it's much, much more romantic and much, much more forgiving in some ways than I think than that book is. So that was Ann Patchett's Bel Canto. Again, I'll leave a link in the comment section below if you want to check out my review of Commonwealth. And next time I'm going to be reading Children of Time by Adrian, I believe it's Tchaikovsky. Until next time, please, if you enjoyed this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment section in the comments below if you've read the work or have any questions about any of my videos. Until next time, bye.